So, we have a very, very special guest today, Rajan Mehta. Rajan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Rajan is a technology business leader. He is a serial technology entrepreneur as well. Rajan has worked extensively, maybe close to 18 years in the telecom sector in the initial years of his career. And then he has started a very, very innovative technology company called Live Media. Congratulations, Rajan, for the success story. And then he has again worked on several business startups, for example, Live Check, then again, Climate Action Labs. And again, recently, he has been in the news, my dear friends. He has also written a very, very specific bestseller books called Backstage Climate. And let us hear him out, because I think this is an area where there is a lot of heat coming on. And Rajan, maybe I think we'll also be hearing your story in your words. But before this, maybe I think we'll also be more curious to know the journey, maybe I think the divergence that you have taken. That should also be the part of your story as well.
Sure.
Maybe I think you can hear your story from the beginning. Over to you, Rajan.
Sure. Thank you. My story is nothing special. It's the story of any growing young man in India. And so I originally come from J&K. So the hilly part of the Jammu region of J&K.
Very nice.
Did my education in Jammu and moved out for my engineering to Chandigarh, and then came to Delhi, started working. And we were just lucky. It's a situation of being at the right time, at the right place. Our generation was very lucky because digital had just come in, computers had just come in, and the world was experiencing a change.
And you are referring 90s, the starting of 90s.
88, actually. 88 is when I started my career. So world over, digitization was happening. And India was especially lucky because we had just started opening up, right? And we rode the wave. Got a job in a computer company, worked for a few years. And that by that time, the telecom wave had started, So I first got recruited by a Swiss company, which was starting operations in Asia, South Asia, actually. So spent a few years with them. And then the big things in telecom started happening. Mobile telephony came in and got recruited by Motorola. And we were, instrumental in kind of setting up the mobile networks in India. And that gave us a lot of satisfaction and growth in our careers. And as we were building that, the next wave of internet started. And again, got recruited by Nortel, which was both into telecom and was a pioneer in internet infrastructure, and started kind of building up telecom and internet networks in India. I also spent a couple of stints outside of the country. So that is what was happening. So we were, as I said, lucky to be riding this wave. And at some point in time when I was working with Nortel, through this journey of 18 years that I had spent, I'd seen a lot of entrepreneurs coming up, right? Both on the software side as well as on the telecom side. And that somewhere kind of sowed a seed of entrepreneurship in me. And, I said, why not? Why not try it?
And that was 2000?
2006,
2006,
actually, yeah. I tried actually earlier in 2002 as well, but failed. So fortunately, I hadn't given up my job at that time. So in 2006, I then started Live Media. Live Media was a digital out-of-home media company, a new concept altogether. And I spent the next, 10, 12 years building it. It grew to be India's largest digital out-of-home media company. And then I exited that in 2020, 21. But then in 2017, 18, I also started another company called Live Check, which is a SaaS platform, and we work as a back-end service provider for the insurance and financial industry. As this was happening, we were fortunate that LiveCheck, very early in its journey, became a profitable company.
Wow.
And then COVID hit, right? And when COVID hit, it kind of gives you a pause, right? To think, to reflect, right? And I had also, in the meantime, got interested in climate change, right? And therefore, I took a sabbatical and went to Harvard, did a research fellowship for a year, learned about climate change, and came back. And that's when I started Climate Action Labs. So Climate Action Labs is a nonprofit. The whole idea is to push the frontiers of climate action, so that we can do our bit, or the world can do its bit to avoid the climate crisis. As part of that, we also felt that it's important to, while a lot of people, there are a lot of experts who understand climate change very well, both on the technology side, and there are some who understand it on the political and economic side. But in general, we figured that while people have information about climate change, there wasn't real awareness about it, right? There wasn't too much of, people knew what 2 degrees centigrade is and what Paris Agreement is, but really how it impacts us, what lies ahead for us, I felt there was a gap. And that's how I came up with this book, Backstage Climate, which is, it's like a primer on climate change. It talks about the science behind climate change, the politics, the economics, so that we take a broad sweep and make it interesting for people to know what is happening. Because we believe that awareness is the first step towards change, and this will interest people, and therefore people will start taking action towards controlling this impending crisis.
Very nice. I think, Rajan, you have shown the trailer, which is already in the very fast moving. So I think my wish that you can maybe, I think, describe about the live media in more detail, because coming from the telecom sector, particularly on the technology side, you were working, and then changing the course of action from the technology side to the media side is not easy. You certainly had a maybe, I think, a very courageous step at that point of time, when maybe, I think, investment or entrepreneurship and maybe businesses, these are the words which were seldomly used among the generations like yours at that point of time. So how did you do this? How this change of course so all of a sudden?
In hindsight, you can knit a story and make it sound very interesting, but it just happened. As I said, in my journey, I'd seen a lot of entrepreneurs doing extremely well. And not only financially, but I felt, doing something new has a excitement and a challenge of its own. And entrepreneurship or anything new happens, or the scope for entrepreneurship or anything new that you can do rises or increases when there's a disruption in the market, right? And, one question that comes to me is, why didn't you do anything in telecom, right? But I had already done things in telecom, and by nature, I keep looking around, And as an entrepreneur, what happens is you keep looking for problems, right? And you spot a problem and you want to solve it, right? And that gives rise to an idea or a solution, and then you build a business, right? So what happened in my case was I was looking at the media space or general, what's going on in the society. And I felt there was a disruption happening in the way in people's lifestyles. What you remember in early 2000s, gradually, people were spending less time at home and more outside because shopping malls started coming up, restaurants started opening up, gyms started coming up.
Yes.
Hospitals, from being places of gloom and doom, started having cafeterias where people could go and sit. So all this change, I felt that, people are moving away from spending time at their homes. Whereas when I looked at media, I figured out media was designed to catch people at home, right? You look at newspapers, people would read them at home. You look at TV, people would switch it in their bedrooms or drawing rooms. You look at radio in those terms, FM wasn't there, but it was still, you would listen to it at home. So my hypothesis was that if people are spending less time at home and more outside in the places that we spoke about, then media must follow them there, right? So what we started doing was creating media in those places where people were going and spending their time. And we started putting up these large LCD TVs and created a kind of out-of-home TV network. This would show some interesting content and some advertising. Obviously, our revenue came from advertising, and people's interest to view these screens came because of the content. And the content was very well researched. It wasn't like long format content. These were short snippets, probably 30 seconds each.
Prepared for captive audience.
Targeted for captive audience in a very simple kind of a manner. And I think that caught the fancy of people, that when people started kind of watching those and the advertisers came, rest is history.
Very nice. Maybe it's some more story about yourself as well. Maybe you have a sibling, you have maybe some more stories about yourself as well.
We're a large
Coming
family.
from, maybe I think that part of the land always makes us more fascinating, and maybe I think make us more exciting to hear more stories about you and how you have come from that part of the land. JNK is always more like very fascinating place for all of us.
It's one of the most beautiful places on the planet.
Place, yes.
Absolutely. And I think more than the place, the people make it even better. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So we're a large family. I have 5 siblings, all scattered all over. And I now have a small family. My wife is there. I'm there. We have 2 kids. Both are grown up and working. So, yeah. Okay. If there's anything specific you want to know, I'm happy to.
No, I think anything specific that you want to share, I think that any piece of information which can make our listener more informed, I think that will be wonderful for us.
No, I think we've had a very happy childhood, as most people have. Grew up without any parental pressure. I think the best gift, our parents gave us was independence right from the beginning. So that made us kind of be responsible for our own selves, for our careers, for our, I think what they really taught us was how to be good citizens.
Very nice. So generally, what we have seen Mehtas in Gujarat, or maybe I think Rajasthan, but Mehtas in Jammu Kashmir is a very less known phenomena for us. So maybe I think this is also one of the curiosity if you want to clarify.
You're right. Mehtas are generally, you'll see them in Gujarat. There's some in Punjab.
Yeah.
So our family actually comes from, originally from Himachal, where my great grandfather and their families were. And one of our ancestors, his name was Jairam Bastiram Mehta. He was a general I believe, in the Ranjit Singh's army.
Wow.
And he was the one who conquered Ladakh for him. And this is like what we've heard, right? That while he was kind of on his mission to conquer Ladakh, the entry into the area was made through a place called Mehtab. And that's how he got the title Mehta. And then the family, or he was given land by the Maharaja in a place called Kishtwar. And that's how the family kind of settled there. And, that's where we've come from. You'll not hear about many Mehtas in that part of the Jammu Kashmir, Kishtwar, in J&K. I think there's probably one family only which has now spread all over. Yeah.
Very nice. Thank you so much for sharing such good piece of information with us.
Welcome. Yeah.
So coming back to maybe I think climate related discussions.
Sure. Yeah.
So you mentioned the Climate Action Lab. That is also one of the initiatives after Live Check. What is it about? Maybe it is something which is a kind of labs or demonstration labs which being created in the institutions. That is our understanding, but maybe I think you can elaborate it more.
Sure. So it's a foundation, it's a non-profit, which is a way of kind of, working to help. I'm careful of using these words because I don't want to sound pompous, but it's a way of our contribution to the society. I think society has given all of us a lot, and therefore we felt it's time to kind of give back a little bit or give forward a little bit, as they say now.
Very nice.
So climate is a big problem.
Yeah.
Right. It's real. Right. And the world is working on how to grapple with this. Right. And there are big initiatives that are being undertaken world over.
Yeah.
For example, energy transition, how to transition from the fossil fuel energy to clean energy, right? How to transition transportation from ICT engines to, electric vehicles, how to decarbonize the industry, how to make land use changes. These are all big things, very important, because only they can make the needle move, as they say. They will, right? But what we felt was that in addition to these, there were some sub-mega initiatives under the radar, which nobody was looking at. But these initiatives, if taken collectively, could also make or contribute towards controlling climate change. So we are focused on those initiatives. And this was part of the fellowship that I did at Harvard, that I was kind of delving into these. I'll give you a simple example.
Yeah.
If you look at any product that uses energy, it always comes with a menu of settings.
Correct.
Right? You look at the mobile phone here, you look at computers, printers, elevators, washing machine, your toaster, many machines in the factories.
Yeah, everything anything which has a brochure.
Which has brochure, and you have to set it up.
How to use it.
To use it, and you make those settings accordingly, fix the parameters. Now, most of the time, you would fix the parameters for optimum local performance. You want your printer to really print nicely. You want your computer to be bright, the screen to be bright, whatever. Or you start using them as they come from the factory. We believe there's a way to fix these settings for climate optimization or for emissions optimizations, because it's greenhouse gas emissions that are causing climate change, right? I'll give you an example. If you look at your desktop printers, I'm taking a very simple this thing. Probably 80% of the new printers being manufactured have the capability to print on both sides of paper, right? But only 7% of the printouts taken worldwide are on two sides.
Oh.
93% are on single side. If we were to take all the printouts on both sides of paper, you will save approximately 20 million tons of carbon dioxide every year.
Wow.
That's a huge amount.
Yeah.
Right? Now, this happens not only by way of saving paper, but also because the motor in the printers is running once rather than twice. So you're saving on energy as well, right? The second thing, again with printers, is, if I'm giving a print command,
Yeah.
the moment the print is over, I'm relaxed, saying the printer is now sitting idle,
Not working.
not working. But in reality,
Yeah.
it is still consuming 25% of the power because it goes into a standby mode.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas there is another mode that it could go into, which is the sleep mode, where it will consume only 4% of energy rather than 25%.
Yeah. Idle power.
Right? Similarly, there are other things in a printer you could do. For example, the kind of font, the density of font. By default, it may be very, very good to look at, right? But not very good for climate, right? So like this, there are various settings. Now, what happens, like I spoke to you about dual side printing, I spoke to you about, instead of standby mode, if it's on sleep mode, it'll save power, like font size will save power. Now, one way is you go and educate the consumers about it, but reaching 1 billion consumers is not easy. And convincing them or taking the message to them is not easy. And then making them change their habits is definitely a very hard task.
Very hard task.
Right?
Yeah.
So how do you bring around this change? So what we are doing is we are going to the manufacturers straight and asking them to make these as default settings, so that when they ship their products from the factory, they are shipped with these default settings. All printers should be set for dual side printing. All printers should be set so that after the print out is over, it goes into a sleep mode rather than. All printers by default will choose a font which is low on ink and low on, therefore consumes also low energy, right? But it's not that simple because let's say the printer manufacturer does that, it still won't make a change because the printers the relationship between the printer and the computer needs to be understood because it's from the operating system that the print command is given. So you need to work with the operating system guys as well. And then many a times there are commercial issues involved because many of these printer manufacturers, they lease out their printers to large corporates and they charge them on a pay-per-go basis.
It has nothing to do with the consumption.
Right. As many papers they print, that much they charge. Now, instead of 1 page, 2 pages, now if they're printing only 1 because of dual side printing, their revenue will go down. So you've got to address all these issues and see how you bring around these changes. Like that, there are probably thousands of products, right, where you can bring around changes like this. So that's one of the missions that we are working on. We've researched all these products and, there are case studies we're doing behind them on what kind of change will they bring around, how, and so.
Very nice. I think it is very, very important topic that you have raised, and maybe Climate Action Lab has a task to do, because I think these are all these maybe I think examples which looks very little, but maybe if you look at the cumulative impact, I think they are huge, and maybe most of the cases, maybe you can actually, if you have the numbers available and have the research data available, then you can actually figure it out that you are avoiding a lot of maybe megawatts of thermal power plants or nuclear plants or so many such maybe specific energy generation devices which may not be required.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. I mean, I'll give you another example. If you look at packing today, the packaging, right? Most of it, once you open the product, goes into the dustbin and therefore into the landfills, where it kind of rots and then emits greenhouse gases and also litters the place and plastic pollution and what all. There's a lot that can be done about packaging, and therefore that's one of the areas that we are working on. So there are 2 themes that you're working on there. One is, how do we create an ecosystem for reusable packaging, right? Packaging, after you open the product, should not be thrown?
Mm.
Is there a reverse logistical system you can create to reuse it, right? So that's something that we working on developing the ecosystem for that. Another is, how do you avoid wasteful packaging? There are many products which can be sold without packaging. So we're kind of working on a theme called that you don't need sell naked, we call it, right? You don't need to kind of put packaging on everything. So if you can sell a product without packaging, please do. It'll do the planet a lot good.
No, absolutely. I think recently, maybe some nutritionist also, they have maybe sent an email to Zomato co-founder, Mr. Goyal, that if they could maybe avoid packaging in the plastic, then it will also be a lot of, maybe I think, avoiding a lot of health issues for the consumer.
That's true.
Because plastic in general has a lot of such maybe components or ingredients which are which may create a lot of maybe harmful effects when they go for the heating or reheating.
That's true.
Part.
That's true.
Yeah.
So there are a few things around plastics. One is, I'm sure you heard about microplastics.
Yeah.
Right. They're now in our bloodstreams.
Yeah.
So in many parts of the world, they've tested samples, and I forget the percentage. It may be in 0.00%, but they're finding microplastics in human blood now, right?
Yeah, and it will increase maybe I think day by day because
that's true.
Is part of our daily use nowadays.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true. The second is what you said. The plastics give out toxins, especially at higher temperatures. And the third is they're destroying the environment because they don't decompose so easily.
Yeah.
And therefore, the load they are putting on the environment is huge. Other than in many cities and towns, you hear about these floods and all, which are caused by clogging of the the pipes or the surges, which happens with plastic.
Because of this only, yes.
Yeah.
You have a specific commodity which is not being maybe I think reutilized or not being disposed well.
That's
then
true.
Certainly it will go down to such maybe I think drains, and then the cities will be flooded.
So there are now a few plastic islands in the oceans.
Yeah.
Where because of the gyres and this thing, plastic has got accumulated. All they're as big as islands now, big islands which is all plastic now, and huge toll on the marine life as well.
So Rajan, I think you have hit on a very specific topic, which is maybe I think a very, very important aspect for the I think the community at large. When we look at the plastic and we look at the inventor who invented the plastic, he certainly was celebrated, and then he got the Nobel Prize as well, because his idea was to avoid a lot of tree cutting because of the paper use. And now when we look at maybe I think some of the initiatives where you mentioned that the paper have to be reduced because of the maybe I think it will also lead to a lot of maybe I think excessive tree cutting component. So there are both ways on both sides of the discussions. Certainly when we look at the vision, because you are a writer and you have certainly look at the things not at the immediate requirement, but also look at the maybe I think the future to some extent. So what I particularly mean to say, when you have invented such a specific material or invention, maybe citing some maybe best use of the technology, but it fails down in due course of years in terms of its real purpose, and it becomes the menace also. Similarly, this is what we have seen in case of plastic. And now we want to get rid of the plastic just because it is excessively used. Maybe when we look at the innovation, the technology, do we also not research out particularly for the impactful usage or impact over a period of time, rather than just maybe start celebrating on the new invention? What is your understanding on such topics?
That's a very interesting topic, and I want to show you This is the book. And the last chapter in the book, we are riding a tiger. Right. Yeah. And I want to show you the picture as well. It shows like this.
Yeah.
So man is a curious being, right? We are inquisitive. We always want to grow, to develop, to make our life comfortable. And that's how it should be.
Yeah.
If that wasn't, the spirit of inquisition wasn't there in us, we would be in the caves, right? And it's a part of that spirit of inquisition that we've developed so many things. But many of the things that we've invented, developed, made, and are using may not be in line with the principles of nature, right? And therefore, while they make our lives comfortable, there could be some unintended consequences of those technologies, right? Climate change is a classic example, right? Fossil fuels were lying nicely, comfortably under the surface, right? And then we discovered them, and they made our life so easy, right? I mean, the whole industrial revolution was fueled by them.
Yeah.
Whether it's motor cars or industry or, you and me traveling and you and me, doing all kinds of things. The basic tenet has been fossil fuels, right? At that time, we didn't understand what they're doing, right? Fossil fuels has been one of the biggest geoengineering experiments ever done on the planet, right? And now it's causing global warming, right? And our survival is under question. To solve these, I have no doubt in my mind that scientists and our technologists and our entrepreneurs will come up with solutions, and we will be able to control it, right? I think that's the confidence that the human race has, or we have in the human race. But while we will solve it, what next will it do? What would be the unintended consequences of the technologies we bring in to solve this is what is challenging. So for everything, it's been like that. That's why I say it's like we are riding a tiger, right? And the moment you're riding a tiger, you can't afford to get down, because the moment you get down, the tiger will swallow you. So technology is like that. One thing will lead to the other, will lead to the other, will lead to the other. It's a never-ending game, but where it leads us.
Very nice. I think this perspective is also very unique when we keep deliberating such topics which are pretty much like the circle only. You create something because this is a need for the human race. But people should also be prepared for the ill effect of that invention as well. And better if we can create something which is maybe the mitigation plan as soon as possible. And that is what we are doing for the climate change as a component as well. Coming to this book, Rajan, this is called Backstage Climate. And this is one of the bestsellers in this domain. And then, Rajan, certainly, I think my first question will be that maybe I think you can tell us more about this book and how it is maybe I think beneficial for the listeners to go through. But maybe I think before this, from the Climate Action Lab or Live Check, this was in the insurance, and the Climate Action Lab is pretty much like maybe the foundation, more like a charity dominating work. And then writing the book is always like a very different kind of maybe task. But you have swiftly changed all these maybe actions without any hassle, and everything that you do, I think they certainly clear a particular milestone as a reach. So maybe I think that is also one thing. How this idea came to your mind in terms of writing the book on the subject like climate change? That is one. And then tell us something more about this book as well.
So as I mentioned, I went and did my fellowship. So I got acquainted to climate change. But then what happened was, when I would talk to scientists and technologists, I figured they knew a lot about climate. So, rightly so. That's their domain, right? And then I met economists, some politicians, and they knew a lot about economics and politics, right? And economics and politics, really speaking, at the crux of it is about distribution of power and wealth, right? And then I started seeing that the scientists don't understand the distribution of power and wealth, and the politicians and economists don't understand the distribution of carbon, which is kind of causing this whole change, the whole climate thing. So that kind of remained in my mind, that there is a gap there. And then I started talking to general people like you and me. I figured out that there is information that people knew there's something happening on climate, but most of them felt it's not for me, it's for somebody else, right? And yeah, that was my understanding, that information is there, but the next step, which is awareness and knowledge, wasn't there. So I thought this gap needs to be bridged, right? Both at the scientist and economist, politician level, as well as at the general public. So what I've done is, in this book, it's a broad sweep on climate change, right? So I've tried and covered all aspects of it, starting from the science behind it, the politics behind it, the economics behind it, the solutions that can help us, the policies that can help us, and what lies ahead for us. So the objective being that at the people level, right, it gets one interested, right? Because only if awareness is there, interest is there, you will be motivated to take some action, right? Without that, you will not be, right? So that was one. And also at the scientists and the politicians and economists level, I wanted to bridge the gap, right? So that, they can then connect the dots. Because if you see our society, our economic structure is built around energy, right? Our whole growth, development, most of it rather, has happened around energy, right? And therefore, if we were to address climate change and we were to move away from fossil fuels, then not only the science, but the distribution of power, wealth, which is all built around fossil fuels, needs to be addressed and changed as well. So my idea was to put people who understand distribution of carbon and people who understand the distribution of wealth and power in a society together, bring them on the same platform so that, effective solutions can be debated and worked around.
I think bringing everyone on the same platform is something that is the wish list.
You can only attempt, and this book is an attempt towards that. I think as we go along, we'll see what other initiatives can be done. But, I think that's the need of the hour, we feel.
Very nice. So one of the articles, Rajan, which you have written, it also refers the Sagar Manthan, and it also mentions that you have a maybe Asur and Dev, or the gods, both together, they come for maybe, I think, finding the nectar as a process.
That's right.
So if we look at this metaphor or this historical story and relate to our set of maybe global society, certainly you have some countries which are very mighty, powerful countries.
Right.
Some of them are developing and some of them are underdeveloping. And then all of them have come together to discuss about the climate change, to bring the maybe solution out of it. That is where we see that a lot of maybe countries, maybe close to 200 countries, they participated in the conference of parties, and they try to bring the solution out of it. And then maybe some of them have the commitment, some of them have the less commitment. Globally, if you look at such maybe initiatives, how do you see that they are maybe coming to bring the nectar, as you have mentioned in that article? When I say nectar, it means that are they concluding on year basis? Do you feel that these mega events, they are bringing some relief to the climate change as a crisis also?
Yeah, certainly. So when I talk about the Samudra Manthan, it is in reference to the Paris Agreement, right?
Yeah.
See, it's very difficult to fix responsibility for climate change on any one country or any one entity or any, Climate change is a collective action problem.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
You emitting carbon dioxide here are not going to be necessarily affected or impacted by it.
Yeah.
It goes up in the air, mixes, travels everywhere, causes global warming.
Absolutely.
The impact of which could be felt anywhere.
Yeah.
Right? Now, we all know that there are countries which have used a lot of fossil fuels and therefore benefited in terms of their economic development or social development or military power because of that, right? There are other countries which are developing or non-developed countries, which for whatever reasons have been conserving the environment, right? Not emitting as much carbon dioxide. Now, when climate change was recognized as a problem, no one country could solve it. Because as I said, carbon dioxide goes and mixes in the air and then travels everywhere. So the impact could be anywhere.
Yeah.
So it was very important to bring everybody together so that effective solutions could be worked out, because it's a global issue, right? But when you were bringing people together, the developing countries, rightly so, said, we haven't caused this problem. You have, they pointed out to the developed countries, and you have caused this problem, you solve it.
Yeah.
But soon it was realized that that's one position the countries could take. But in the end, the developing countries would suffer even more than the developed countries.
Yeah.
Because the effects of climate change, let's say, whether it's droughts or floods or, diminished food supplies or health issues or rising sea levels, developed countries would have the wherewithal or the means to handle that because they have money, they have technology. Whereas developing countries would not, right? They would suffer more.
Yeah.
So I think Paris Agreement brought everybody to the table, which was a superb thing because otherwise we couldn't address this problem. And they've created that platform where the world is coming together to solve this issue. And every year, I think what you were referring to were the COP meetings, right? There are two perspectives on COP, right? The positive perspective is it provides a framework to the world to come together, right? There needs to be a place where everybody can meet and discuss and recognize that there's a problem and something needs to be done. I think the Paris Agreement and the COP is exactly doing that. Without it, every country would be going in different directions. So I think from that point of view, it's a super initiative and it's got the world going in the right direction, right? In fact, the world has gone much beyond Paris Agreement, and rightly so. And to some extent, that's as per the design of Paris Agreement as well. Now, countries are talking to each other to see how they can cooperate and do things in addition to the Paris Agreement. Companies are coming together, right? NGOs are coming together, right? So Paris Agreements has spurred a lot of extra Paris initiatives as well, right? So I think we're all going in the right direction. There's no doubt about it. And as I said, the world will come up with solutions. In the same breath, I would also say not enough is being done. right? Because the climate change or the emissions which cause climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, is a stock and flow problem. There's a lot of greenhouse gases that have already accumulated in the atmosphere, and then we are adding more.
Yeah.
Right? Now the world is focused on how do we, these new ones that we are adding, how do we reduce those? Right? But it'll take a lot of time because, as I was talking earlier, all our systems of development are based around fossil fuels, right? And industry and land use change. So it'll take time for that to come down. And governments have to work together, companies have to work together, and we as individuals have to demand from our politicians that they do something about it, from the companies that we buy products from, that they make sustainable products which are carbon neutral, right? The whole ecosystem has to come together to address this problem. But what I was coming down to, even if we make the emissions zero, the problem is not going to go away.
Yeah.
Because there's already a lot of stock of carbon dioxide that will continue to heat the globe for some time to come. So we have to also suck out the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. There are natural ways of doing it. There are technology ways of doing it. And so what I'm trying to say, there are many other things. For example, let's say, there are some flashpoints which can really accelerate climate change. I won't go into the details.
Yeah.
But let's say one of those happens and the world's temperature shoots up. We need a solution, right? How to bring it down. And that no one country can do alone or should do alone, because it's a matter of, all concerns the whole planet. So for many of these things, the world kind of all countries need to be talking, cooperating, engaging, to make sure that we don't miss on any possible solutions and accelerate our response to climate change.
Yeah.
I don't know if that gives you an answer.
No, I think that is the perfect response. I totally agree that maybe I think you cannot just make it a zero on the day one or the day zero, but I think the transition has to happen, and how fast you are doing it, I think that is where your efforts lies.
That's true.
And maybe I think, but parallelly, one more thing that maybe I think that may come from such global events that should come out, at least you being the technology or the tech entrepreneur yourself, you understand a lot of technology innovations or the inventions they are required to maybe I think mitigate such climate challenges. And we have also seen and we have witnessed them as well, that the frequency of climate change is very visible. It is not that you can say that this is your problem, not mine.
We are seeing it every day.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that is where maybe I think that the public by and large, they also have understood, or they are understanding it quite well, that this is something which is important aspect. And then maybe I think the focus effort should be made on such technology availability as well. Either it should be open source or it should be subsidized. Maybe someone who has already developed, they should be available for the underdeveloped countries, maybe FOC or free of cost. I'm not too sure, but I think that should be the expectation from maybe I think the people like us who are working in this area. Now, coming to maybe from the global side to the maybe our country side, let us see how we are doing. In terms of the policy regulations that we see, a lot of policies which are there, our Honorable Prime Minister, he himself is very aggressive and maybe positive about the kind of effort that the country should make. He also has declared the whole country will become the carbon neutral by 2070. And it requires a lot of maybe effort, not at the center level, but at the state level or municipality level also. A lot of policy regulation, they have to be not only to be framed, but to be implemented as well on ground. But some of the examples that we see in India, they are best examples. Let's say the LED bulb replacement, Ujala. Yeah. Now we are seeing a lot of maybe air conditioning based examples in terms of maybe the inverter based technology which got implemented through the support from the manufacturers so quickly. And that is where maybe some of the more innovative mechanisms that are to be brought in so fast in these contexts, that maybe I think the solution should be available and visible, that you can create the framework and you can achieve the milestone as well. Because when we say carbon neutral, it is not easy. 99.9% of the demography in India, they do not know about the carbon neutral, all these terminologies which we see days and nights. I think people are not well aware of. You mentioned the awareness. I think this is the biggest challenge in any case.
That's true.
But maybe I think when you write such books, I'm sure like you have certainly researched out so well, not only in India, but maybe across the globe. Maybe what could be the best model that can be brought in Indian context, or maybe internationally as well, so that maybe the climate change as a crisis can be mitigated, or at least can be optimized quickly. Maybe some specific examples.
Oh, that's a broad question. I'll attempt to answer.
Sure.
See, we must understand, to develop a solution, we must understand where the problem is coming from, right? Yeah. So today, if you see the greenhouse gases, it's basically the greenhouse gases which are causing the problem. 65-70% of them are contributed by the fossil fuels, right? Around 20% by industry, and another 10% or so by land use changes and all. If you look at fossil fuels, most of them go into power generation, right? Globally, I think 2/3 of the power is still generated using fossil fuels, coal and right. The rest, 29% or something of the fossil fuels go into transportation, right? And another 5 to 7% go into industrial and home heating. Especially in the cold countries, all homes are heated, and then a lot of industries need high temperatures for processes, and that comes from fossil fuels, right? So which means we are so dependent on our energy requirements on fossil fuels, right? So we have to transition this energy to renewable forms. Now that is happening, right? We've got solar, we've got wind, we're now exploring geothermal, there's ocean wave energy, right? All these will happen, but they also have their challenges, right? You have solar and wind, but the sun doesn't shine all the time and the wind doesn't blow all the time, right? And the supply and the demand, therefore, are not matching. So we need to kind of create storage, right, for it, which is a technology in development, and deployment now will happen, right? So I'm not going to go into the details, but just to give you an idea. On the other hand, our energy requirements are multiplying, right? Because our life is becoming more comfortable. To make it comfortable, you need energy, and therefore, right? So to keep up with these energy requirements is going to be a challenge, right? Either you keep burning more coal, which we can't afford. So you got to keep exploring, other sources of renewable energy, or in my view, we even got to start re-looking at better forms of nuclear energy, which for the last 10 years has been an outcast ever since the Fukushima incident. But the world has been silently working on developing safer, cheaper nuclear technologies, right? Not only are they working on making nuclear fission safer and cheaper, but there's a new kid around the block called nuclear fusion, which is inherently a safer technology. But people have been working for it for probably 50 years, and it may take a couple of decades, or I hope lesser, for that to be commercialized, right? So things like this, as we kind of control, make sure that we move the energy to clean form, the problem will get addressed. right? The second aspect of, again, is industry. So industry contributes to greenhouse gases in two forms. One is the energy requirement it has, because that energy comes from thermal power or, fossil fuels, and therefore is contributing to. The second is through the process. Right? For example, if you look at steel and cement, steel contributes approximately 5 to 6% of the total greenhouse gases in the world. Cement, another 7%. Huge. Right? And this is when they are manufacturing cement and steel. The process gives out, or the chemical reactions give out that kind of
CO2 emissions.
CO2, right? So there are now technologies developing which are electrolysis based or hydrogen based, where carbon dioxide will not be emitted. So, but these are long-term things which are still being worked upon. So I have no doubt that industry's contribution to carbon emissions will also come down. The third is agriculture and land use change, right? There are two parts of it. One is food, agriculture, or let's say this thing. The second is the livestock, cattle. In the food part of it, or the agriculture part of it, 33% of the food is wasted globally, right? Either in our kitchen or in retail or in transportation or right at the time of harvesting. People are working to see that how this wastage can be reduced, right? We will get there. Second is the livestock. That gives out a lot of not only carbon dioxide, but methane. And methane is, depending upon what parameters you use to calculate, it could be 30 or 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas. Right? And the demand for livestock is increasing tremendously, because world over, as people become rich, they like to consume more proteins. And the source of proteins happens to be livestock. And livestock not only give out methane, but for rearing of livestock, the jungles need to be cleared for their ranching. Food needs to be grown for them. The whole ecosystem takes a lot of, emits a lot of carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases. So we need to be cognizant. So all three things need to be worked out. I mean, progress is happening. I think I would say three things. See, people, you and I can make changes in our lifestyle, right? But how many people will make those changes, how quickly, is debatable. So we can't really bank on those individual initiatives for climate crisis to be addressed. The second layer is that of the industry, right? Industry, by nature and by composition, will work for maximization of profit, rightly so, right? And therefore, for us to expect changes from them on their own is difficult. Some of them, the Good Samaritans, may do it, but some may not. So therefore, we have to bank on the government and the policies, because only the government and its policies can bring around mass change, right? So that it is followed through and through. So that's where the buck stops, I would think, right? For bringing effective change.
Very nice. I think I'll come back to the government initiatives or the policies later. But one word that you have used, I think, a couple of times, land use change. So when I understand, the land use change is, let's say, from the agriculture to some other process industry.
I'll give you examples. If you look at the Amazon, which is considered to be the lungs of the world, I'm forgetting, since 1990 or 2000, something like that, 17% of the Amazon has been cleared, right? Most of it for cattle ranching and for growing feed for cattle. And this is in that Brazil area, because the demand for meat has gone up so much, right? that is a land use change. And what happened was there was a jungle there that was absorbing all the carbon dioxide because photosynthesis trees do. Now that's been cleared, right? And that natural capability of that area to absorb carbon dioxide has gone away, right? And therefore, it is contributing to climate change, right? Similarly, urbanization, right? Ever since the Industrial Revolution or when the Brits went to North America, huge land areas were cleared for agriculture. So when you replace jungle land with agriculture, its ability to absorb carbon dioxide goes down, right? When you clear it for cities, when you clear it for dams, when you clear it for roads, right? You allow construction, urbanization to happen. All these contribute to either reducing the carbon sinks, the natural carbon sinks, or when you allow urbanization to happen, a lot of cement, steel, other things get manufactured, they contribute to climate change. So that's what I meant by
very nice. Okay. Very better perspective. Particularly for the protein per se, do you feel that this is something which is part of a specific lobby? Why do we have such mindset in terms of that the protein lies only in the non-veg category of the food? Is it something that we have a maybe conventional understanding? Why do we not have that belief? We may have a less protein in the maybe pulses or maybe I think a lot of such vegetables here. But you mentioned that the demography is shifting towards the non-veg for the craving of the protein. We totally see it. But why does it happening?
I don't know. I think it's cultural.
Okay.
That mindset issue. I'm totally with you that I'm not passing a judgment, but whether animal protein is the healthiest of all or not, there are two sides to it. You know, some people say it's not healthy, some people say it's healthy. But culturally, you see, what happens is as prosperity comes, we want to show we have arrived, right? First thing, buy a watch, buy a car. And I think our eating habits also reflect that. Your non-veg consumption goes up, you know, those kind of things happen. But there are solutions being worked. You know, there's vegetarian meat being produced now. It started off well. It's kind of slowed down a little bit. But, you know, the good thing, I think, where we should take comfort is that, again, comes down to the ingenuity of the human race and the Inquisition. You know, people saw it as a problem. They've been working to develop plant-based meat, which, you know, and I've tried it. It almost tastes quite similar. You know, so
new inventions
to
meet the demand.
What impact it may have or what unknown consequences it'll create, we don't know.
We'll
but for
later.
the time being, it's solving the problem.
Very nice. So, Rajan, we have some rapid fire also, just to break the monotony.
Oh, sure.
So maybe I think apart from your own book, which is a Backstage Climate, maybe what else you will recommend for the climate change as an awareness or as a knowledge perspective for people?
I think there are many good books. You know, honestly, I haven't read many books because since I was kind of reading about it day and night, I would divert my attention that for pleasure I would, or for this thing, I would read something else. But I recently read a book called The Fragile Earth, which is actually a collection of articles which were published by the New Yorker magazine over a period of 20-25 years. I would recommend that to whoever is interested in the topic. Beautifully written, beautifully captured. It covers the full spectrum. Amazing book.
Very nice. Okay. And what is your mantra when it comes to climate change or climate action?
I don't have any mantra, to be honest with you. But, you know, since you're asking me, I think if all of us kind of adorn this principle of less is nice and small is beautiful, I think it'll help. And what I mean by this is that the problem of climate change is being caused by consumption or overconsumption.
Yeah.
Right? You can take it you can use this logic for anything that we use or consume, or right? Instead of bigger homes, smaller homes would be better for climate. Instead of bigger cars, smaller cars would be right. Instead of buying 20 clothes a year, if we can do with 2, would be better. Instead of traveling for a holiday 10,000 miles, if you can have an equally good time somewhere close by, would be better. So yeah, less is nice, smaller is beautiful. If our mindset changes to that, I think automatically we will all kind of start controlling emissions as well.
Very nice. Okay. And what is your, maybe I think, eco-friendly travel destination?
I'm not a...
Although you have mentioned that the nearer is better.
Absolutely. So I would, I grew up in J&K. So our travel destination would be...
back to the roots.
Back to the roots, going for a trek, actually. I think those are great excursions and best ways to explore nature, have a time to yourself. And so I always prefer that.
Very nice. And what is your vision for the sustainable future?
Again, I don't know if I have a vision, to be honest, but I think, we have to follow the rhythm of nature, right? If we go against it, then we will always have these aberrations, as we're seeing. I particularly believe in 2 things. One is the power of circular economy, right? I think we need to imbibe it and bring it into our daily lives. We as individuals, companies as, business organizations, and even the governments from a policy point of view. And second, from a scientific point of view, I see this whole trend towards biomimicry. More and more, we are seeing what nature is doing and trying to do that. I think that's a good thing, right? Using biomaterials, doing biomimicry, so that we are in rhythm with the nature. I think if these 2 things are done, we'll be okay on sustainability.
Great. Very nice. Yeah. Coming back to maybe I think the normal question, before the rapid fire, you mentioned that the policy or the government should do some specific work in terms of making the climate change management more fast. So in terms of when we look at, maybe I think several countries, they have a lot of focus on the research activities and in maybe inventing the newer mechanism. If we focus on the India, we look at a lot of maybe the government departments, for example, Department of Science and Technology, DPIIT, or Department of, let's say, Mines or Ministry of Mines. A lot of maybe ministries or the departments, they are there and they have a lot of maybe focus on the new invention. With your perspective, and maybe I think with the global understanding or exposure, do you see that we are doing enough research works in terms of meeting the requirements which are actually necessary to cater the demand for the climate mitigation perspective?
In all honesty and fairness, I don't think we do much research here.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have the resources or the infrastructure for research, especially on climate and many other things as well. So therefore, what we should be good at is taking that research, converting it into processes or products or this.
Customize it with the
Indian. And basically implementation, right? Of what are the best practices in the world that are being successful, bring them here and implement them, right? And I think in all fairness, government, industry have been doing somewhat. The advantage that India has is that legacy-wise, our emissions are not very high. I mean, just to give you an idea, we are probably around 3 tons per capita, right?
Yeah.
Compared to US, which is probably 15, compared to China, which is around 11, 12.
Yeah.
So we don't have a lot of baggage, right? And most of our emissions are coming from power sector, thermal power, right? It's a question of how do you balance development, the investments which have already gone into those projects which have been implemented, right, with climate change, right? If we were to shut down all our existing, let's say, coal power plants, which is not easy, because in that meantime, how are we going to fill that power gap or energy gap?
Not easy.
It's not easy, right? But if we were to shut them and change towards, let's say, renewable power, the first thing is, if you look at, here comes the politics or the economics behind it. Where is that money going to come from, right? We don't have internally, right? It needs to, people who have caused this problem, the developed world should give it to us and to other developing countries as well. That is not happening. So therefore, there is delay in our kind of shifting away from power, thermal power to the other, right? Second is in terms of, let's say, transportation, where we are so dependent upon fossil fuels. And now we are going electric, right? But even for a country like India, right, I don't have the exact percentage, but I believe something like 15, 18% of the government's revenue comes from fossil fuels today, from the import duty, from the whatever other taxes, cests and other things.
Refinement and etc.
Today, if they say, okay, no fossil fuels, that 18% of the revenue or whatever evaporates. How's the government going to meet the rest of its expenses? So you see, one, we need money for the project itself. The second, if we were to shift, we lose our revenue. So how do you balance these things? So these are issues at the policy level that you need to kind of work out. So it's, I just wanted to kind of give you a flavor that it's not like a lot of people say, oh, you should stop, thermal power tomorrow.
No, I think there are a lot of government initiatives where I think we ourselves are involved with. We have seen a lot of initiatives from Bureau of Energy Efficiency, which is a part of Ministry of Power. They have initiated programs like doubling of energy efficiency or tripling of energy efficiency. So I think such initiatives, they may not be very much like visible to a lot of demography around, because this subject itself is a lot of technical and then it requires bit more, maybe I think seriousness to understand as well. So maybe I think a lot of discussion, it's very fulfilling and satisfying to listen you and maybe I think hearing what all the, maybe I think milestones that you have achieved. A lot of diversity in your work itself gives a lot of excitement in terms of what all a professional can do in the journey of maybe I think 30, 40 years of the career. So thank you so much, Rajan, for coming and being the guest to our podcast.
Thank you. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much. But before we end, I think you have to give a message to our audience in terms of maybe climate change. How should they embrace it quickly? And you also mentioned one thing which is very, very important, that the problem is not mine but yours. How to maybe I think get rid of such maybe behavior, because that is also important. That awareness is challenging, no doubt about it. But I think behavioral change takes time. Maybe I think it may take not this generation, but next, or maybe next to next as well. But it is going to happen in any case. That is for sure. So what is the, maybe I think a specific message?
I would say that what I said to you earlier, less is nice and small is beautiful. So the message that emanates from there is, if you can lower your consumption, please do, for anything, whether it's traveling or the clothes or the cars or the house or whatever else, I think you will contribute tremendously in avoiding this climate crisis that way. Right?
Great. Thank you so much,
You're very welcome.
Rajan. And I think we'll be having the next round of conversation when you'll have maybe I think next venture or next book coming up.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much.